Emily Carter had never expected a quiet Tuesday morning to change the course of her life. At 26, she lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on River Road in Eugene, a place that still smelled faintly of the lavender candles her grandfather used to burn. It wasn't fancy, and the walls carried the soft wear of years gone by, but it was hers, one of the few things she felt truly grounded in. That morning, as a pale Oregon mist rolled over the street outside, Emily stood in her small bathroom staring at 3 identical lines. 3 tests, all positive. The digital one had flashed the word pregnant so decisively it almost startled her. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, the reality settling slowly, then suddenly, like the warmth of a blanket spreading through her chest. She sat down on the edge of the tub, letting a soft, breathless laugh escape. She wanted to be sure, though, not just hope, not just imagine, so she'd gone straight to a small women's clinic near downtown Eugene. The nurse there, kind-eyed and gentle, confirmed it within minutes. "Congratulations," she said, handing Emily a pamphlet she barely glanced at. "About 6 weeks along." 6 weeks, a new life, a new chapter, a family. On the walk back to her car, Emily felt as if her feet barely touched the pavement. She imagined how she would tell Damon Rhodes, her boyfriend of several years. She pictured his expression, surprised at first, maybe a little overwhelmed, but then happy. She imagined the moment his arms would wrap around her, lifting her from the ground, telling her this was exactly the future he wanted. She held on to that image the entire drive home. By the time she pulled into her parking lot, the excitement inside her had grown into something bright and unstoppable. She headed straight inside, opened the fridge, and began pulling ingredients onto the counter: fresh salmon fillets, baby potatoes, the herbs Damon liked. She wanted the evening to feel special: warm lighting, soft music, the kind of atmosphere that made news feel magical. As she marinated the salmon, she found herself smiling at nothing. She pictured Damon walking in, smelling the rosemary, asking, "What's the occasion?" She could already hear her own voice trembling with excitement as she told him he was going to be a father. Maybe he would laugh in disbelief. Maybe he would pull her close, bury his face in her neck, and promise he'd do everything to make this work. Damon had his flaws, his inconsistency, his drifting from job to job. But Emily always believed there was a good heart under all of that. She wanted to believe this news would bring out the best in him. She wrapped the prepared dish and decided to run a quick errand before finishing the setup. Some candles, maybe a small bouquet for the table. The Oregon air was cool when she stepped outside, carrying the familiar smell of rain-soaked pavement. As she crossed the entrance to the small shopping plaza, she nearly collided with someone coming in the opposite direction. "Whoa! Emily?" a voice said, warm with surprise. She looked up and immediately recognized him. Sean Whitmore, her old high school friend, the boy who used to write her notes in chemistry class, who once asked her to prom with trembling hands. She hadn't seen him in years. "Sean?" she said, startled but smiling. He laughed softly, and she noticed how much he had changed. Older, definitely. More confident, broader shoulders, a clean-cut look that suggested success rather than uncertainty. His jacket looked expensive, his posture assured, but his expression was still the same: warm, steady, genuine. "I thought that was you," he said. "How have you been? It's been, 8 years?" "Something like that," she replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been good, just taking life as it comes." They talked for a minute or two. Brief, easy, natural. Sean mentioned he'd moved back to Springfield after starting a financial consulting business. He said it was good to be near family again. Emily nodded, offering small updates about her work and life in Eugene, careful not to reveal the news she was saving for Damon. Sean didn't ask for her number, didn't linger, didn't complicate the moment. He only gave her a warm smile and said, "It's really good to see you, Emily. Take care of yourself, okay?" "You too," she said. When he walked away, she stood for a moment, watching the retreat of his black jacket before turning back toward her car. The brief encounter felt strangely grounding, like reconnecting with a piece of her past she had forgotten she missed. She headed home with her shopping bag in hand, her heart light, her steps quick. Everything felt aligned. Everything felt like it was finally going her way. Emily believed with all her heart that her future was just beginning. That evening, the apartment on River Road filled with the warm scent of salmon and rosemary. But the empty space where Damon should have been grew heavier with every passing minute. Emily checked the time on her phone, then the front door, then the stove again. Damon had promised he'd be home by 6. At 7:30, she finally heard the familiar, uneven rhythm of his footsteps in the hallway. The door opened, and Damon Rhodes walked in with the restless energy she'd come to recognize. Half excitement, half self-absorption. His jacket smelled faintly of beer and backstage dust. "Hey," he said, not looking at her, tossing his script onto the small table near the entryway. "We had a rehearsal that ran long. The director's losing his mind again." Emily stepped toward him, her heart pounding with anticipation. "I made dinner," she said, trying to keep her voice even. Damon barely glanced at the set table. "Smells good," he muttered as he pulled off his shoes, attention drifting back to his phone, scrolling through messages from his theater group. She swallowed, reminding herself that this moment still mattered. "Damon, I need to tell you something." He finally looked up. "What's up?" Emily took a slow breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Damon's face stiffened, the lines around his mouth tightening. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. Emily waited, expecting delayed joy, shock, something, anything. But his expression stayed frozen, like someone had just handed him a bill he couldn't pay. "You're pregnant?" he said finally. She nodded, a hopeful smile trembling at the edges. 6 weeks. I went to the clinic today." Damon ran a hand through his hair and looked away. "Wow. That's a lot." His voice lacked enthusiasm, warmth, or even curiosity. Just discomfort. Emily's heart faltered. "I thought you'd be happy." "I just didn't expect this," he said. I'm not sure we're ready." The words slipped out too quickly, too truthfully. Her pulse tightened. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. Damon forced a smile then, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. No, it's good, Em, it's fine. I just need to process it." He stepped forward and pressed a quick, shallow kiss to her forehead, the gesture mechanical. "Let's eat, okay?" They sat down, but Damon barely touched his food. He scrolled through his phone between bites, occasionally offering half-hearted comments about rehearsal or a role he wanted. He didn't ask about her appointment. Didn't ask how she felt. Didn't ask what the doctor said. Emily watched him, confusion curling deep in her chest. Later that night, when she reached for him in bed, Damon gently pushed her hand away. "Babe, we should be careful," he said. "I don't want anything to happen to the baby." Emily blinked. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass." And the doctor said, I know, he interrupted. "But better safe than sorry, right? Let's just lay low for a while." He turned onto his side, his back toward her, leaving Emily staring at the dim outline of his shoulders. The excuse didn't make sense. Not really, but she forced herself to believe it. Maybe he really was scared. Maybe he needed time. Over the next few days, Damon's distance grew more obvious. He stayed late after rehearsals, claiming the director needed him. He said he was stressed about money, worried about making it as an actor. Yet he never applied for the side jobs he talked about. He never contributed to rent, groceries, or bills. Instead, he depended on Emily's savings, the money her grandfather left her, the safety net she'd always kept untouched. Whenever Emily gently suggested looking for steady work, Damon sighed dramatically and said, "I'm doing my best, Em. You know things are tough." She reminded herself she loved him, that relationships had phases, that fear sometimes made people shut down. She clung to the belief that he just needed time to adjust. The excitement she'd felt that morning hadn't vanished. It had simply quieted, waiting for him to catch up. Lying awake beside his sleeping form, Emily pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering to the tiny life inside her. "He'll come around," she said softly. Though her voice wavered with doubt she refused to acknowledge. She told herself Damon was just in shock, nothing more, and she forced herself to believe it. 2 days passed before Emily finally gathered the courage to tell someone besides Damon. Nikki Cruz had been her closest friend for nearly a decade, sharp, outspoken, and allergic to anything that smelled like dishonesty. If anyone would give her an honest reaction, it was Nikki. They met at a small cafe near downtown Eugene, a place they used to visit after work. Emily slid into the booth, her oversized cardigan wrapped tightly around her. Nikki arrived moments later, dropping her bag onto the seat with her usual burst of energy. "You look tired," Nikki said, narrowing her eyes. "Everything okay?" Emily hesitated. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Nikki's face lit up, but only for a moment. Then her smile faded and concern crept in. "How did Damon take it?" Emily forced a small laugh. "He wasn't expecting it, but he'll be fine. He just needs time." Nikki leaned back, crossing her arms. "Emily, the guy freaks out when he can't find his wallet. A baby, that's huge, and not once has he stepped up for anything. Has he even looked for a real job lately?" Emily stiffened. "He's trying. The theater means a lot to him, and it's just been a stressful week." "A stressful week?" Nikki raised an eyebrow. He hasn't held a steady job in years. You've been paying rent, groceries, bills, all from your savings, your inheritance, and he knows it." Emily's stomach tightened. She stared at her coffee, suddenly wishing she hadn't said anything. "Damon's not using me." Nikki sighed, softening but refusing to back down. "I'm not saying he's a monster. I'm saying he's comfortable letting you carry everything. And now that you're pregnant, you need to think about what's real, not what you hope he'll become." Emily's voice sharpened with unexpected defensiveness. "You don't know him like I do. He's just overwhelmed. Anyone would be." Nikki's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and hurt. "I'm trying to look out for you. You're my best friend, but you're acting like I'm attacking him." "Because you are," Emily snapped. "You're always assuming the worst." Silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. Nikki looked away, blinking hard. "Okay," she said quietly, "if that's how you feel." Emily's chest tightened with guilt, but pride kept her still. Their coffee arrived untouched by both. That night, Emily told her mother as well. Linda Carter listened carefully over the phone, voice calm but tinged with worry. "Honey, are you sure Damon is ready for this?" "He will be," Emily said quickly. "He's just processing." "Processing is one thing," Linda replied gently, "but he's been drifting for a long time. I'm not saying he's bad, I'm saying he's not stable, and you need stability now more than ever." Emily rubbed her forehead, feeling the familiar pressure behind her eyes. "Mom, can you please not start? I'm doing my best. Damon is trying. He just needs a little time to adjust." Linda sighed. "All right, sweetheart. I'm here for you no matter what. You know that." Emily hung up feeling even more cornered. All she wanted was for someone, anyone, to be as hopeful as she was. But instead, everyone seemed determined to pull her back into fear and doubt. When Damon came home that evening, she told him about the conversations. He listened with an indignant scoff, dropping onto the couch dramatically. "So everyone thinks I'm a loser," he said, shaking his head. "Great, that's real supportive." "That's not what they said," Emily protested weakly. "Come on, Em, you know how they see me." His voice softened, wounded. "I'm trying so hard and they just make you doubt me more." Emily felt the guilt wash over her, the guilt she'd been trained to feel whenever Damon played the misunderstood victim. She sat beside him, touched his arm, and whispered, "I don't doubt you. His expression softened instantly, relieved to be reassured. And just like that, the wedge between Emily and Nikki widened, subtle, invisible, but real. Emily told herself nothing was wrong. She told herself everyone else was overreacting, but she refused to see the signs staring her in the face. For a few days, Damon behaved as if nothing unusual had happened. He didn't bring up the pregnancy again, didn't ask about appointments, and didn't mention the baby at all. Emily took his silence as a sign he was still processing, though each passing hour made the explanation feel thinner and thinner. Then, one evening, Damon came home with an unusual burst of enthusiasm. Manufactured, a little too loud, but enthusiasm nonetheless. He dropped his backpack on the couch and opened his laptop before Emily could ask how rehearsal had gone. "So," he began, scrolling rapidly, "I've been thinking a lot about our future, especially now that we're, having a baby." Emily blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Of course," he said with a smile that felt stretched at the corners. "I want us to have a real home, not just this." He waved vaguely toward the apartment walls. Emily looked around. The modest two-bedroom space wasn't glamorous, but it had belonged to her grandfather, passed to her in his will, a quiet, grounding gift after years of uncertainty. She'd grown attached to it in ways she couldn't fully explain. "I like this place," she said softly. "I know," Damon replied, "but it's small, and the baby will need a room, and we'll need space. Maybe a backyard, something more family-oriented." Emily hesitated, unsure whether to be touched or uneasy. Damon kept scrolling. "Look, Santa Clara University District. There are some incredible listings here." Emily's stomach tightened. Those were some of the most expensive areas in Eugene, full of newly renovated homes, upscale rentals, and families with significantly higher incomes than theirs. She walked over to him. "These places look way out of our budget." "Our budget?" Damon repeated, as if offended. You have the inheritance. That apartment is worth a lot more than when your grandfather bought it. If we sell it now, we can put a huge down payment on something much nicer." The way he said "we" sounded off. Too eager, too calculated. Emily crossed her arms. "I don't know, Damon. My grandfather left that apartment specifically for me, and we're managing fine here." "But we shouldn't just manage," he argued. "We should thrive. Don't you want our kid to have the best start possible?" The phrasing hit her hard, almost guiltily. She looked at the screen again. The houses were beautiful. Big windows, tree-lined streets, family-friendly neighborhoods. Damon flipped through the photos with growing excitement. "This one has a nursery already," he said. "And look at this backyard. Imagine having barbecues, birthday parties. It's perfect." Emily bit her lip. "It's also $700,000. Damon shrugged. "So, in 5 years, it'll be worth even more. It's an investment, and we'll never have this chance again once the baby comes." She didn't respond immediately. Her grandfather's inheritance wasn't massive, but it was significant enough to make her feel safe. It had always been her backup plan, her guarantee that no matter what life did to her, she wouldn't be left with nothing. Damon must have sensed her hesitation because he softened his voice. "I'm not trying to control anything. I just want to give our child a better home, and I want you to be proud of the life we're building." The words were gentle, but the timing was too perfect, too rehearsed. Still, after days of emotional exhaustion, nights of Damon's distance, and the loneliness of feeling unsupported, Emily found herself wanting to believe him. She wanted to believe he was stepping up, finally showing real interest in their future. Later that week, Damon brought the idea up again while they ate takeout at the small kitchen table. "Just think about it," he said. "We can meet with a realtor, get an estimate, and see what kind of place we can afford. No pressure." No pressure. But every conversation after that circled back to houses, neighborhoods, down payments, and what's best for the baby. Damon spent hours browsing listings, bookmarking dozens, acting as if buying a new home was the most obvious, natural next step. Emily felt overwhelmed, pulled between her emotions, her pregnancy, her exhaustion, and Damon's sudden obsession with family planning. She found herself nodding along even when her gut whispered warnings she could barely articulate. One night, after staring at another set of listings Damon had left open, Emily finally said, "Okay, maybe we should at least look." Damon kissed her forehead, beaming triumphantly. Emily didn't see the triumph. She only saw a man who seemed, for once, engaged in their future, and so, despite her confusion and fatigue, she chose to trust him. The pain struck suddenly, sharp enough to pull the breath from Emily's lungs. She had been walking from the kitchen to the living room, planning to fold a basket of tiny onesies she'd bought on impulse, when a deep cramp twisted through her abdomen. She grabbed the back of the couch, her knees nearly buckling. Another wave came, worse this time. Something was wrong. She fumbled for her phone and called Damon first, out of instinct, but he didn't pick up. Without waiting, she dialed 911. By the time paramedics arrived, sweat dampened her hairline, and she could barely speak through the tight, crushing spasms. When they rushed her through the sliding doors of Peace Health Sacred Heart Medical Center, Emily clung to the thin edge of hope that the baby was still safe. Nurses guided her onto a bed, attaching monitors, taking vitals, moving with calm urgency. A doctor approached, voice steady. "You're experiencing significant uterine contractions, but the baby still has a heartbeat. We're going to give you medication to relax the uterus and stop the cramping." Emily nodded through tears, hands gripping the blanket. She told herself to breathe, to stay calm for the baby. Damon arrived nearly an hour later, smelling faintly of cigarettes and stage makeup, still wearing his rehearsal clothes. "Emily, what happened? Why didn't you wait for me?" he asked, sounding more inconvenienced than worried. "I didn't have time," she whispered. I thought I was losing the baby." He placed a stiff hand on her shoulder. "Well, you're okay now. That's what matters." But as the doctor explained she would need bed rest for at least 2 weeks, Damon's expression shifted, not to fear but to calculation, as if he were mentally rearranging plans she couldn't see. The next morning, while Emily lay exhausted and weak, Damon sat beside her bed, pretending to look sympathetic. "Listen, Em," he began casually, "about the apartment. The realtor says we need to move quickly. The market's hot right now." "Damon, please," she whispered. "Can we not do this right now?" "I just don't want us to miss the perfect place," he insisted. "You know, for the baby." Emily looked away, focusing on the slow rhythm of the IV drip. "I can't go anywhere for 2 weeks. We can handle it later." "That's the problem," he said, lowering his voice. "We can't handle it later. We need a power of attorney so I can sign on your behalf. It's just paperwork." Emily froze. Power of attorney?" "Just temporary," he said, smiling in that gentle, coaxing way he used when he wanted something. "It'll let me handle the sale. The realtor can bring the papers here. You'll barely have to lift a finger." Her stomach twisted, not from pain this time, but from the echo of Nikki's warnings. But she was exhausted, scared, and overwhelmed. The baby mattered more than anything. She didn't have the strength to fight. "Please, Emily," Damon said. "This is for our future." When the realtor arrived with the documents, Emily's hands trembled as she signed the power of attorney, a broad one giving Damon full authority over the sale. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself they were building a home. She told herself she was doing the right thing. Later that afternoon, Nikki arrived unannounced. The moment she stepped into the hospital room and saw the papers on the side table, her eyes widened. "Emily, what is that?" Nikki asked sharply. Emily avoided her gaze. "Just something for Damon, so he can handle things while I'm here." "You signed a POA?" Nikki picked up the document with shaking hands. "Emily, do you have any idea what this gives him? He can sell your apartment. He can move money. He can sign anything in your name." "It's not like that," Emily whispered. "He just needs it for the sale." "For the sale?" Nikki's voice cracked with disbelief. "You're in the hospital, terrified you're miscarrying, and he's worried about closing dates?" Emily's throat tightened. "Please don't start. I can't handle another fight." Nikki's expression softened for a moment, but only for a moment. "I'm scared for you," she said quietly, "and you're pushing away the only people who actually care." Tears blurred Emily's vision. "Just stop." The atmosphere grew tense, suffocating. Nikki set the papers down, her jaw clenched. "I love you, Em, but this is dangerous." "I said stop," Emily repeated, turning her face toward the window. Nikki left a few minutes later, her footsteps heavy with frustration and fear. Behind the scenes, far from Emily's hospital bed, Damon wasted no time. With the power of attorney in hand, he signed the sale documents, transferred the proceeds into an account under his name only, and walked out of the realtor's office smiling. He already had what he wanted, and Emily had no idea. 2 weeks passed in a blur of fluorescent lights, medication schedules, and restless nights. Emily did her best to stay calm, telling herself every day that the baby just needed time. Time to grow, time to stabilize, time to reach the moment when she could finally hold him. Peace Health Sacred Heart Medical Center became both her refuge and her prison. When the contractions returned, this time real, rhythmic, building in strength, Emily gripped the rails of the hospital bed and breathed through the sharp waves. Nurses moved quickly, alerting the obstetrician, preparing the delivery room. Emily had never felt so unprepared, yet so determined. Hours later, in the early gray of an Oregon morning, she gave birth to a baby boy, small, warm, pink-cheeked, his tiny fingers curled instinctively around her thumb. They placed him on her chest, and Emily whispered the name she had chosen during one of her lonely hospital nights. Artem Carter Rhodes. A soft, delicate name, one that felt gentle enough for a child she already loved fiercely. But even in that sacred moment, she noticed Damon wasn't there. He had said he'd step out for an hour earlier, something about going home to shower before the big moment. That hour stretched into 4. He missed the delivery entirely. When he finally walked into the room, Emily was cradling their newborn, tears still wet on her cheeks. "Hey," Damon said, as if he were late for a casual dinner. "Is everything good? I came as soon as rehearsal let out." Emily stared at him, exhausted and stunned. "Rehearsal?" He shrugged. "The guys wanted to celebrate the upcoming premiere. I told them I might have to leave early, but you know how it goes." Emily didn't respond. She couldn't. The joy of holding her son fought against a swelling ache of disappointment she didn't have the strength to voice. Damon stayed for 20 minutes, long enough to take a few pictures of himself holding the baby, then said he had to run an errand and slipped out again. Emily watched the door close behind him, feeling a loneliness so sharp it pressed against her ribs. The next afternoon, while Emily tried to soothe Artem, a nurse came in with a gentle smile. She adjusted the IV line, checked Emily's vitals, then glanced at her chart. "You're looking much better now," the nurse said. "Those early contractions must have been scary." "They were," Emily admitted. "I thought I was going to lose him." "Well, the medication worked beautifully, and good thing we caught the cause early." Emily frowned. "The cause?" The nurse tapped the chart. "Your initial blood work showed traces of an herbal uterine stimulant. It's commonly used to trigger contractions, sometimes in midwifery practices, sometimes in supplements. Did you start any new herbal teas or powders recently?" Emily froze. Her mind flashed back to the kitchen, the soft steam rising from a mug, Damon placing it in her hands while she sat on the couch, wincing from mild cramps. "It's chamomile," he'd said. "Good for relaxing." But it hadn't been chamomile. She knew that now. Her throat tightened. I didn't take anything new, not that I know of." The nurse misread her silence as embarrassment. She offered a reassuring smile. "It happens more often than you'd think. Some herbal blends aren't well regulated. You probably drank something without realizing what was in it. Emily nodded slowly, but her chest felt hollow. The nurse left the room, humming softly as she pushed the cart away. Emily stared at her sleeping newborn, her heart pounding against her ribs. Memories lined up like puzzle pieces. Damon's eagerness to make her tea, his sudden concern about protecting the baby, his avoidance, his pushiness about the apartment. Each fragment clicked into place with terrifying clarity. What if the herbal tea hadn't been a coincidence? What if Damon hadn't wanted the pregnancy to continue? A coldness spread across her skin as she held Artem tighter. She tried to shake the thought away, tried to blame stress, hormones, exhaustion, but the doubt was there now, dark, heavy, undeniable. Emily didn't say a word to anyone, but the fear settled in her chest, deep and sharp, refusing to leave. And for the first time, she wondered if the man she loved was capable of things she never could have imagined. Discharge day arrived in a quiet hush of pale winter light. Emily dressed slowly, every movement tender from exhaustion. Artem slept against her chest in a soft hospital swaddle, his tiny breaths warm against her collarbone. A nurse helped her pack the last of her belongings, a few blankets, baby clothes, a folder of instructions for new mothers. Everything felt unreal, like she was sleepwalking through someone else's life. Damon hadn't shown up that morning. He hadn't shown up the night before either. Emily kept checking her phone, willing it to buzz with a message, a reassurance, a promise that he cared. The silence was suffocating. She signed the final discharge papers with trembling hands. "Is someone coming to pick you up?" the nurse asked gently. "Yes," Emily lied. "My partner should be here soon." She didn't know why she said it. Hope, maybe. Habit, denial, something fragile she wasn't ready to let go of. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, holding Artem close, staring at the hospital door as if Damon might walk through it any second. Instead, her phone vibrated. A voicemail. Just one. From Damon. Her stomach tightened. She hit play. His voice filled the room, casual at first, then sharper, colder. "Emily, look, I don't know how to say this without sounding like the bad guy, but I can't do this. I never wanted this. A baby, a family, that was never the plan." Emily's breath caught. Artem stirred slightly, sensing her tension. Damon continued, his tone almost annoyed. "I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You kept talking about the future like it was some kind of fairy tale. And I'm done pretending." Emily pressed a hand over her mouth, her vision blurring. "And there's something else," he said. "I've been seeing someone, for a while. 4 years, actually. Before you ask, yes, it was serious. Yes, it overlapped. No, I'm not sorry. She's the one I actually want to be with. We're leaving Eugene. Together." Emily felt her heartbeat stutter, as if someone had reached inside her chest and squeezed. "You're strong. You'll figure things out. But I'm not going to be involved in any of this, in the baby, in the mess, in the responsibility." His voice paused. Emily prayed the message would end, but it didn't. "Oh, and about the apartment. Yeah, I sold it. The POA made it easy. Everything's under my name now. You won't see a cent of that money. I earned it dealing with you for all these years." Emily gasped, the sound choking out of her. Tears spilled down her cheeks onto Artem's blanket. "And one last thing," Damon added, almost carelessly. "I signed the paperwork to give up parental rights. I'm not going to be a father. I don't want the kid. Don't contact me. Don't send pictures. I'm out." The voicemail ended with a soft click. Emily sat frozen, her body trembling violently. Her mind couldn't grasp all the pieces at once. The betrayal, the cruelty, the apartment, the money, the other woman, the baby he didn't want, the abandonment. Her whole life had collapsed in a 7-minute voicemail. Artem whimpered softly. Emily clutched him closer, burying her face into the soft fabric of his blanket as sobs tore out of her. She cried until her throat burned, until she could no longer breathe, until the only thing anchoring her to reality was the fragile weight of her newborn son. When she finally stood, her legs felt unsteady. She wiped her face with the back of her sleeve, lifted Artem carefully, and stepped out of the room. Nurses smiled kindly as she passed, assuming she was heading toward a loving partner waiting downstairs. Instead, Emily walked slowly through the long hospital corridor, alone. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped inside, holding Artem close, her tears forming silent trails on her cheeks. She pressed the lobby button, the motion almost mechanical. Outside, the cold Oregon air hit her like a slap. There was no car waiting, no partner running toward her, no home to return to, no savings left, nowhere she could go. Emily stood on the sidewalk, her newborn in her arms, the hospital doors sliding shut behind her. She had never felt more alone in her life. The cold Oregon morning clung to Emily's skin like a second layer of frost. She stood on the hospital sidewalk with Artem cradled tightly against her chest, her thin discharge jacket doing nothing to stop the wind slicing through her. Cars passed. People hurried inside. Life carried on around her, as if she wasn't standing there with her entire world in ashes. Her phone was silent. No message from Damon. No apology. No explanation beyond the devastation he'd poured into that voicemail. Emily rocked Artem gently, more for her own stability than his. Her breath trembled in the air. She had nowhere to go. No apartment, no partner, no plan. Then she heard the low hum of a large engine approaching. A black Chevrolet Tahoe slowed in front of the hospital entrance. The windows were tinted, the paint clean despite the winter slush on the streets. For a second, Emily felt a spike of fear. She didn't know why, maybe because everything in her life had become unpredictable. The driver's door opened. Sean Whitmore stepped out. Emily blinked, stunned. In the gray morning light, he looked almost unreal. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal jacket and holding a small bouquet of lilies, her favorite flowers she hadn't mentioned in years. He shut the door and walked toward her with a kind of quiet determination that made Emily's throat tighten. "Emily," he said softly when he reached her. "I'm here." Her eyes filled instantly. She tried to speak, but the words jammed in her chest. Sean didn't hesitate. His expression was a mixture of concern, frustration at the situation, and something protective that Emily couldn't name. He glanced at Artem carefully, respectfully, without pity. "I heard what happened." His voice steadied. "Nikki called me last night. She was scared you wouldn't reach out to anyone." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call." "You don't have to know." Sean's tone softened even further. "You just have to get in the car." She stared at him for a long moment, exhaustion weighing down her limbs. Then she nodded. He took the hospital bag from her shoulder with gentle precision and opened the back door of the Tahoe. The interior was warm, soft air blowing steadily. Sean even had a brand new infant car seat installed, professional, secure, ready. Emily froze. You bought a car seat?" Sean gave a sheepish shrug. "Nikki said your due date was close. I thought, just in case." Her vision blurred again, but this time the tears came from something other than grief. Once Artem was buckled in and safely settled, Sean helped Emily into the passenger seat, draped a blanket over her legs, and closed the door softly, as if she might break. The drive toward Springfield was quiet at first. Emily kept her gaze fixed on Artem, afraid that if she looked anywhere else, the pain would overwhelm her again. Sean kept both hands on the wheel, careful, steady, a presence that felt like an anchor. After several minutes, Emily finally whispered, "Nikki told you everything?" "Yes." He didn't sugarcoat it. and she's been out of her mind with worry. She wanted to come get you herself. But your mom insisted someone should stay home and prepare for you. Emily winced at the thought of facing Nikki after their fights. Sean seemed to read her mind. Nikki's not angry, Emily. She's scared. She cares about you more than you know. When they pulled up to Linda Carter's house in Springfield, the porch light was already on despite it being morning. The front door flew open before Sean even parked. Linda rushed out first, her arms trembling as she reached for Emily. "Honey, oh my God, are you all right? Come here, come inside, baby." Emily broke again, collapsing into her mother's embrace while still holding Artem. Linda held both of them tightly, whispering reassurance into Emily's hair. Nikki followed right behind, her eyes red, guilt etched across her face. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to push you. I was scared for you, for the baby. I should have been there sooner." Emily shook her head through tears. "No, Nikki. I pushed you away. I didn't listen." They hugged, long and shaking, the kind of hug that stitched broken pieces back together. Inside, Sean set Emily's belongings by the hallway, moving quietly, respectfully, trying not to intrude. When Emily finally looked up at him, he stepped closer. "There's something you need to know," he said gently. "I checked the county property records last night." Emily's breath caught. Sean met her eyes. "The sale of your apartment. Something about it doesn't look right. At all." Emily's pulse quickened. Fear, confusion, and the faintest spark of hope. Sean spoke with calm certainty. "Whatever Damon did, we're going to figure it out." For the first time since Damon's voicemail shattered her life, Emily felt the faintest shift inside her, a movement from pure despair toward something steadier, not safety, not clarity, but the beginning of hope. The living room of Linda Carter's Springfield home was warm, filled with soft lamplight and the faint smell of cinnamon tea. But even that comfort couldn't steady Emily's shaking hands. She sat on the couch, with Artem sleeping on her chest, his tiny breaths fluttering against her collarbone, grounding her in the smallest of ways. Linda sat beside her, one hand braced on Emily's back. Nikki dropped into the armchair across from them, her leg bouncing anxiously. Sean leaned against the doorway, arms folded, not closed off, but bracing himself for what he already knew was coming. "I need to tell you something," Emily began, her voice thin, frayed. She swallowed hard. "At the hospital, a nurse told me something about my blood work." Linda's hand stilled. Nikki sat up straighter. "She said they found traces of a uterine stimulant," Emily whispered. "An herbal one. The kind people use to trigger contractions early." Shock rippled through the room. Nikki covered her mouth. "Emily, oh my God." Linda shook her head slowly, her eyes filling, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. Who gave you anything like that?" Emily's throat tightened. "Damon. He was making me herbal teas every night when I was cramping. I thought he was trying to help." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the terrifying realization of what Damon had intended. Linda's voice cracked. "Honey, he wanted you to lose the baby." Nikki let out a sharp breath, anger rising like a storm. "I knew he was selfish, but this is evil." Emily closed her eyes, pressing her cheek gently against Artem's head. "I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it." Sean stepped forward then, his expression tight, controlled, but unmistakably furious on her behalf. "There's more," he said quietly. Linda looked up at him, brows furrowed. "More than this?" Sean nodded. "I checked the county records. Damon didn't just sell the apartment fast. He sold it illegally." Emily stiffened. "Illegally? How?" "Oregon requires both the property owner and a licensed notary to authenticate a power of attorney for a real estate transaction," Sean explained. "The document he used, it was notarized out of state, and the signature verification doesn't match Oregon standards. The sale shouldn't have gone through." Nikki's jaw dropped. So he forged it? Either forged it, Sean replied, or used an online notary that isn't recognized for property transfers here. Either way, the sale is voidable. Emily blinked through her exhaustion. What does that mean? It means the sale can be reversed, Sean said gently, and Damon is in serious legal trouble for even attempting it. Linda exhaled shakily, relief and fury tangling in her voice. What else did he do? Sean hesitated only a moment before answering. He transferred the funds to an account in Nevada, and based on the report I got this morning, he bought a bus ticket heading south. Emily felt the room tilt. He's running. Yes, Sean said, and that's exactly why I called the authorities last night. Linda's eyes widened. You did what? I filed a report with the Eugene Police Department and the Lane County District Attorney's Office, he said steadily. Power of attorney fraud, real estate fraud, financial exploitation, and possible intent to harm a pregnant woman, especially given the stimulant found in Emily's blood work. Nikki let out a low whistle, emotion swirling in her expression. He's done. Absolutely done. Emily touched Artem's tiny hand, tracing the soft, curled fingers. Her heartbeat steadied, not in calmness, but in clarity. Sean continued, his voice gentle but firm. The DA is already interested, and with the medical records, the voicemail he left you, and the property documentation, Damon will face charges. Linda placed a hand over Emily's. Sweetheart, you are safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. For the first time, Emily didn't argue, didn't minimize, didn't defend him. The illusions had shattered in the hospital parking lot. The truth stood here now, undeniable, sharp, but strangely freeing. Nikki leaned forward, her voice softening. We're here, Em. We're not going anywhere. Emily looked at her mother, then Nikki, then Sean standing solid and steady in the doorway. These were the people who hadn't run, who hadn't taken from her, who hadn't abandoned her when things became difficult. A quiet strength gathered inside her, small but real. For the first time since Damon walked out of her life, Emily realized something powerful. She wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. And she wasn't alone. Justice had already begun. Springfield felt different in the weeks that followed, quieter, slower, wrapped in the kind of stillness Emily hadn't felt in years. Her mother's house, with its soft carpet and lemon-scented laundry and gentle morning light, became the safest place she'd known in a long time. Emily spent her first nights there barely sleeping, waking every few hours to check Artem's breathing. Sometimes she cried quietly while rocking him. Sometimes she stared into the dark, letting the numbness settle. But she was safe. For the first time since the pregnancy began, she felt that truth sink into her bones. Linda took care of nearly everything: meals, laundry, nighttime check-ins, hovering but never smothering. She moved with a kind of fierce tenderness. The kind a mother uses when she knows she almost lost her child without even realizing it. You don't have to be strong right now, Linda reminded her softly one afternoon. Just breathe. The rest will come. Emily believed her. Nikki became a constant presence, too. She brought groceries, cooked big pots of soup, folded tiny newborn clothes at the kitchen table, and apologized 100 times until Emily finally laughed and told her to stop. We're fine, Emily said one morning, reaching across the table to squeeze her friend's hand. You were right. I just couldn't hear it then. Nikki's eyes softened. You hear it now. That's what matters. Their friendship slipped back into place, slowly, carefully, but solidly, stronger for having survived the fracture. And then there was Sean. He never pushed, never assumed, never hovered too closely. He simply showed up. To fix a leaky bathroom faucet, to install a baby monitor, to drop off diapers when Emily was too tired to leave the house. He carried Artem with a gentleness that didn't try to claim anything, didn't try to fill any role. He was just there, steady, grounded, warm. He checked case updates with the DA's office, made sure Emily knew her rights, and explained everything in calm, practical terms. Damon's charges were moving forward. The fraudulent sale was being reversed. The money was frozen in Nevada pending investigation. Damon wasn't coming back. Every time Sean explained another piece of progress, Emily felt another knot inside her loosen. Months passed. Winter softened into spring. Artem grew, smiling more, sleeping longer, curling his hand around Emily's finger with absolute trust. Emily healed slowly, physically first, then emotionally, piece by quiet piece. Some evenings, Sean stayed for dinner. He never overstayed. He always asked before holding Artem. He never assumed a future, but he always made himself available for the present. On a warm May afternoon, when the lilac bushes along Linda's fence were in full bloom, Emily stood on the porch with Artem in her arms, watching the light flicker through the leaves. Sean arrived with a small wooden toy, a handmade rattle in the shape of a fox. For him, Sean said with a shy smile. Emily laughed softly. He's going to love it. They sat together on the porch swing, slow and relaxed, Artem asleep between them. The sun warmed the wood beneath them. A soft breeze lifted Emily's hair. Sean waited a long time before speaking again. "Emily," he said gently, eyes on the distance rather than on her, "I don't want to overwhelm you, and I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything. But I also don't want to pretend I haven't thought about something." Emily's breath stilled. He took a slow, steady inhale. "When you're ready, weeks from now, months from now, even years, I'd like to take you out. Properly. Not as a rescue mission, not as a favor, just two people choosing each other." He didn't look at her immediately. He stayed still, patient, offering rather than asking. Emily didn't answer right away. She looked down at Artem's tiny face, peaceful in sleep, then out at the lilacs swaying in the breeze. Her heart didn't leap or panic. It simply settled, quietly, naturally, without fear. For the first time since everything shattered, she felt something expand inside her. Not certainty. Not a promise, just beginning. She turned to Sean with soft eyes and an even softer exhale. "I'm not ready to say anything yet," she said honestly, "but I'm not afraid of the idea." Sean smiled, small, warm, relieved. That's more than enough. Emily leaned back against the porch swing, Artem resting safe between them, the afternoon unfolding in gentle light. No dramatic declarations, no final answers, just possibility. Quiet and open, like the road ahead. And that was exactly how her story needed to end.